Hey everyone. So I thought it would be a good time. If you tune in with us often, we talk a ton about soil sampling. And I thought it would be a good time to kind of go over that. And hopefully if you've been listening and you've taken some of our advice, you have a soil report in your inbox just waiting to be opened and read. And if not, that's okay. We do suggest you hold off, but this is the form. And I think I sent the link to Blake, so you should be able to put that in.
I can share that screen now. Would you like me to share that?
Well, this is just the form to submit it. This is a busy time of year for them, but later on in the spring is a good time to take samples. But if you've got your report already, this is a good time of year to go ahead and apply your lime. So it gives it a chance to go into the soil and do the little interactions with the
chemical reactions.
The chemical reactions. Yeah. That's the word I'm looking for. So if you want to share the screen, I don't know how that's going to look. I've got on that first screen or on that first page, if you look, it looks really intimidating. There's all these numbers. I don't know what ZN-I don't know what a 201 value means, but it doesn't really matter because the people at North Carolina Department of Agriculture say that's the normal range. So if you want to learn more, you can deep dive into it. But the relevant information that we usually talk about is the pH, which is right here in this bottom column. And then the other piece that you will look at are the recommendations. Our recommendations for this field, this is our soil report for the Lake Wheeler, our Lake Wheeler research plots. And so we've got some grains, some cover crops growing in there. And then we also asked for information on tree nursery. So just general recommendations for, broad tree growing. And you can see they've got recommendations. It's within the pH recommendations for the tree growing. It needs a little bit of lime for the sorghum that we had out there. And this plot has a pH of 5, which
it's a little low, but not bad.
But it's not bad. If you look down here on the second line here, the pH is 5.8. That actually, so they suggested even less of the nitrogen. And I was poking around at this report, and they actually have a ton of information when you go to fill your form out. That is another piece where it's a lot, and you look at it on the back there, on that second page, if we pull up the form, I don't know if we can do that, but there's tons of different options. And most of them don't apply to us as gardeners. Most of them are, the wind is gonna.
It might not be. It's not in. We don't have that slide.
Okay. Well, most of them don't apply to the average garden because you're gonna have a wide variety of things growing. But that only matters for the recommendations that you get. It's not gonna change your results. Right? So if you put in there that you want to grow tobacco, it's going to change how much nitrogen they suggest. But it's not going to change. It's going to be the same test no matter what crop you say you're growing. But you could be safe with there's a vegetables other, and then a tree nursery, or there's turf.
Those would be pertinent to the homeowner.
Something
close to it.
Kind of generic that's going to get you in the pH range that you want. Mm-hmm. And then they also have really good information. They linked off to the side, if you pull up that report, next to the recommendations list. They have some really nice printouts that they will send with your report about, here's how you figure out your nitrogen. They've got the math really well written out. I was going to do a demo of that, but it's been too long since I've been in school.
Where is this?
This is on the report itself.
The report itself? Uh-huh.
Yep. There is a link to the side where it says see more information, it says note 11.
Yeah, note 3 here.
No, 11. Yeah.
11. Okay, great.
And they've got a whole bunch. The link to the website I sent you has links to all the handouts with all the information. But I was poking around there today for this, and I found a ton of really well-written, like, step-by-step, here's how you do it, information.
It can it help you out for your home garden, figure out how you can do it on your smaller than a acre property, typically. So what you need to do for your, doing your vegetables, like you said, there's a lot of pertinent information there. It keeps it simple, simplifies it for anybody to do it. Though, I mean, we like plants. We don't like to do the math unless we have to. So,
well, unless you have a problem, you probably you could do the math once.
Yeah.
I think we did soil samples last May, June, and I don't believe we have plans to do them again, because once you kind of get the pH, unless you're having problems, you really don't need to mess with it. I guess I'll hand it off to you.
You're going to hand it off to me? Okay. So I have a totally different thing, but since you've gotten done with the soil, learned a little bit about what you have for your soil, you can start to think about what you might be, hopefully you've already been thinking about what you might be planting. But so this time of the year, if I were growing up, I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and I helped in my family's greenhouse, and I helped my uncle out, and we just had a small nursery, greenhouse, and we did mostly bedding plants and vegetables. So this 1st of January was when we started sowing seeds a lot. So for me, it takes me back now to that. And some of the first things I would think about sowing up there anyways in Western Pennsylvania, well, we're cold. And so if there's anybody viewing us from, say, the northern half of the United States where they have cool summer nights, so Pennsylvania, zone 5, 6A, 5 north, where you actually get some cool weather and grow pansies. So that was one of the first things I would plant. If down here, you did your pansies already. But other things that I would be thinking about planting now were dianthus, which we can grow those here as a summer annual or even short-lived perennials, and perennials, depending on which ones. So I'd be thinking about sowing those seeds. Other things you might think about right now are if anybody wants to try growing bedding geraniums from seed. So normally you can get them as cuttings or cutting grown plants at your nursery, but you can also grow some of them from seed. And they take a while to get going. That's why I say now is a good time to think about sowing those if you're going to do that. So they're truly pelargoniums, which I worked for a geranium breeder at Penn State whenever I was a student. So for me, they're Pelargonium hortorums, but you can get seeds for those and you can grow those out. And now is the perfect time to do them because, like I said, if you sow them now, they'll be ready to plant for in May, end of April and May, which is a good time for us to be planting your bedding plants. So other things you might be thinking about right now are some of the cool growing crops. If you haven't ordered your seeds, you still have a little bit of time that you can do that. Get your catalogs out. Here in North Carolina and Central North Carolina, you can plant. I don't get a chance to do it here or where I live because I live in an apartment, but things like some of the cool crops like spinach and lettuces and broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, you can still do that in February and you can get a crop in before it gets too hot. And so you can be thinking about sowing some of those right now, at least especially the broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage type things, because those you can get them started a little bit in a container before you set them out. Lettuces, you can grow actually in a large container, but I would direct sow those. I would not, if you don't have to transplant them, it's great. In the same way with spinach. But so you can think about sowing those right now. So for me right now,
you could also start thinking or start getting ready if you want to do warm season. I know February is a good season, a good time for like it's a month, and then you divide it in a month, and then. And
that's the other thing I was going to say for us here, or even further north, begonias, which actually we have Mark from his collection, I believe. These came from. Oh no, these aren't. These are from another source. These aren't one of Mark's collections. This is from Chinese alpines. But anyways, we have some species begonias that we've gotten recently from seed. And Sophia sowed these last month, I think.
7, 8.
Was it that?
Oh,
no,
no,
not that
no,
long. That's when we
no.
received them.
That's
It's been
it's
November,
been about a month. Yeah, at least.
November, early December, and these are just coming up. These will take forever to get to something of good size. So if you plant them now, they'll get going, and hopefully by late April and May, you'll have some decent sized plants that you can set out. And so. Other things that we've been sowing, or Sophia's been sowing, I didn't sow any of these this year. Her and the students who have been helping us. There's still tons of time. And not everything, this is a great time though for a variety of plants, but these are actually a maple, an Acer campbellii.
That is from
It's from Mark's collection? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So these just came from, he went to Vietnam this year, in October, I think it was. It was right after the giveaway, right? He went?
Yes.
In October. So he went over to Vietnam. And so these are some resulting seedlings from that. But a plant that I get questions about every year in the garden is our elephant ears. So we have Colocasia gigantea, Thailand giant. And I will tell people that you can start that from seed, which it's not readily available. But once you have one, and if you're worried about you losing it, which they're only marginally hardy even here. So some winters they make it, some winters they don't. They've made it the last few years because we've had really mild winters. But I will collect the flower head, or the seed heads, I should say. They do flower in the late summer. And this is a seed head that I collected in, I think, the 1st of November, more or less. And I dried this out. I collected several of them, and I don't know if it's visible here, but there's all these little segments. So these are related to Jack in the Pulpits and Spathiphyllum. So the peace lilies you may have in the house. I don't know if you've ever seen the inflorescence on those, but they'll sometimes form a reddish fruit, or arums, which do become a little bit of a weed for us here in the garden.
I'm going to take these out of the wind.
Sure. Oh, you're going to use those for a weight over there?
Well, no, I'm going to take them so we don't get contamination.
Okay. But anyways, they form a berry. Their plants in the Araceae actually form a berry, and they're on these interesting, this spadix. And then you have the spath back here, the structure. So anyways, the seeds on Thailand giant elephant ears are minuscule, but I cleaned some pretty much this morning for this demonstration. But I actually probably have a whole bunch in my hand here. They're just so tiny. I can't show you individually here, but
they fly, so be careful.
Yeah, actually last year where I cleaned them there, where we park our vehicles in the back, I had colocaceas coming up last summer. But they take a while to actually get a piece of paper is what you're, I'll show you in here actually. But they take a while to get going. So, so there's a bunch of junk here too, but I don't know if Alexander can, yeah, there's no way. There's too much wind here to actually illustrate that. But the seeds are tiny. But I was able to clean some. I just dry the whole inflorescence out, and then I put it through a sieve, and then I use a fan, and you can fan off most of the chaff, the junk stuff. So, but this is a fleshy thing. You think it's never going to dry out. It actually gets mold on it. You can see some dried up mold. It looks, and it's gooey when you first harvest these, but they do dry out. It took about a month and a half. And I literally have hundreds of seeds in this envelope just from a couple actually ones that didn't have this many berries on them. So, but I'm going to sow some of these now. So hopefully in April or May, we will have some of these that we can have out here on our cart for Sophia to sell for you, to you. Maybe at our Raulston bloom. I don't know how they'll go this year. It just depends. But I literally have, I don't know. There's just a tiny here. So many. I don't need to sow all these on here. I thinly sow these, but I'm doing these. These are tiny seeds. So I don't know if anybody's grown anything, but most of your tiny seeds, most, not all, don't want to be covered up. So I'm not going to actually cover these. I'll just moisten the pot from the bottom up and maybe mist it to moisten the soil on the surface just a little bit. Oh, here we go. Anyway, I lightly moistened this and then I dumped it actually, so on our way up here. But I would do better if I was doing this
on a bench.
On a bench, yes.
Yeah.
And not transporting it. But these will germinate. They need light to germinate. So other seeds, need darkness. So you sometimes have to do a little bit of research. One of my favorite plants that we have here in the garden, and they're almost finished flowering on some of them. They had one species, or a couple of the species that we have, major ones, the cyclamens, for instance. They want total darkness to germinate. They do not want to be out in the sun at all to germinate. So
I got some to germinate.
yeah, I mean, I've germinated a bunch over the years. I used to do it in my drawer, of all places, in my office. When I had a bigger drawer in my former office, I would just put a bag with the pot in it and slide it in there, or in a cabinet, so they don't get light and they will germinate. And other plants don't care. But so these do not want to be covered. And the begonias that we showed you earlier, these, again, you don't cover these. You thought the seeds were tiny on these. These are minuscule.
It's like dust.
These are truly dust. They're there with orchids on the size of the seeds on those. So those are just a couple little things I've gone over with. But like I said, these are one of my favorite plants to grow. And everybody loves these, and you get so much talked about in the garden. So when they get the leaf, it's this big, as big as the table almost. Everyone takes their picture by them. So, but you can grow from a little plant about this big in April, May, and you can have it this big by the end of the summer. And so that's a great one to do if you have kids.
Really
but
cool.
You can also buy them. You're not going to find the seed readily, but once you have the plant, though, you can collect the seed, and that's what I do here. So.
Did we talk about the flowers?
No, we didn't. We didn't talk about the flowers. We just have these kind of out for decoration, and also as paperweights, if you've been noticing our things flowing around. But Sophia had these down in the nursery, and it's like, these look too pretty to have them down there. No one's seeing them. But do you want to say, you said, how long has that been flowering
This
for you?
one has been flowering since October, maybe earlier.
I'd say it's probably earlier.
It has been flowering nonstop. That's in the nursery. You were telling me it can be a little.
This one, in the
quite
past,
tricky.
we've had another selections of this. This is Seemannia sylvatica, and this is Bolivian sunset, I believe.
Yep.
We've had an unnamed selection years ago that we would never get flowers on. The foliage would be beautiful, but they would never flower. And they're borderline hardy. But we planted one. Doug planted one last year in 2021 now, since we're now in 2023. Wow. And it survived last winter, and it grew and it flowered in our lath house this summer. I'm going to say in September.
It was
earlier than I expected. Like I said, in the past, we've never gotten them to flower. So I'm really optimistic about this plant. We've grown some other Seemannias, Seemannia nematothoides, Evita, and Seemannia Little Red, which is a hybrid with nematothoides and another purpurescens. And those do very well for us, but they flower earlier than this species.
And this one, I'll say, it has been on like a touchy spot with my water. So it has gotten dry and like wilted, looked almost dead, and I water it and it pops right back up. So it's
a great container plant, if nothing else, even if we couldn't grow it outside here.
Really cool.
So it would. If the ones in the garden though are down to the ground. It's not top hardy in the weather after the 10 degrees we've had. Another one here. This is one I want Sophia to divide so we can have some more of this. This is one of the newer.
I have a note in the pot there.
Oh, good. This is one of the newer Alstroemeria, and I don't remember where it came from. We brought it.
Mark bought it.
He got it this year
the
somewhere.
West Coast,
so this is a dark-leafed Alstroemeria with these beautiful orange and yellow coral tones, which are really highlighted by the foliage here. So we hope this one proves to be hardy for us. A lot of Alstroemeria are. It's been sitting down in the nursery. Excellent cut flowers. If you ever do grow Alstroemeria in the garden, the way you harvest them, to cut them, you don't cut them. You actually pluck them. And that will encourage it to flower even more. And these are one of the most common plants you find at the florist now. You'll see them on tables in restaurants, that is even like small restaurants like, Chick-fil-A. They always have flowers on their tables, but they'll have Alstroemeria. They're great. They last long. So wonderful plant. You can go and get some at the florist now at this time of the year, and you'll have this for in your house in the cold days of winter. But they will flower for us in spring and typically later in the fall when it cools off. They may go semi-dormant for us in the summer. So Do we have any questions?
questions?
Oh, we sure do.
Oh,
so
gosh.
Linda says, how often do you recommend soil tests? They say that they've had some done 20 years ago, and they rarely add to their soil, but leaves have created great soil. Should they test again?
Was she in 20 years ago? Was she in a new
20.
development? I mean, your soils can change,
they can
especially
change.
if you've been amending them.
Yeah, if they've been, I mean, if you're just interested in like,
It can't hurt.
I like to kind of know what it is, so it can't hurt. And like right now, I think they're $4 a sample because all the farmers are trying to get them in, but they're free for North Carolina residents.
And
so it's why not?
Yeah, your soil does change too. So if you do use amendments, you may be building up certain, that is fertilizers. You may build up certain things. Don't go away. Nitrogen flows pretty well through the soils. Other things, phosphorus doesn't move much. So if you've been fertilizing with phosphorus, it can build up in your soil, and you really don't need to keep on putting it in there. So
is phosphorus the one that will run off if it builds up? It will just.
I'm terrible at that too. Potassium, I think it might too, but the phosphorus is one that can build up in your soil, and if you don't, if you keep on fertilizing.
I would lean towards if you're using a lot of like
inorganic fertilizer.
Yes, that's the words. I was trying to come up with the right words, but inorganic fertilizers, you want to be testing more. If you're using
organic materials like leaf mulch or cow manure, things like that, you're probably going to have less of an issue. But it still can, your soils will be altered a whole lot. I remember Doug saying about the perennial border when he started volunteering here 30 some years ago, the soil and the parts of the Arboretum or the perennial border were totally different than what they are today. It's mainly just because we've been adding organic matter to them. And your soil profile will change.
Yeah, so if you have those, it would be interesting to see if you have been using a lot of organic material to like see what your changes are. If you have those reports still or know about what they were, it'd be cool. Yeah. Good to know.
Awesome.
What's next?
So Marianne's asking, if I want to start seeds in the house, do I need a grow light and a heating mat, or can I just put pots outside?
It depends, actually, but grow lights are great. So and today you can do LEDs.
And inexpensive.
They're
yes. Awesome.
And you can get them, especially the little LEDs, you can get them that they'll fit just on a pot. You can get them, whole, like a 4-foot fluorescence. I
have one with 3 bars, so I've got it over 3 shelves for my little house plants. It's a whole setup.
Yeah, you can use them for your house plants or great for starting seeds. She says about outside, there are some that need chilling. So to mimic, we can mimic the same conditions in a refrigerator if you don't mind putting things in your refrigerator to give them.
You have an extra refrigerator.
Exactly. But you can set your pots of seeds outside, just put them in a protected spot so that, say, the squirrels don't get in them. Or you can direct sow, depending on what it is. Like I said, some of the vegetables, you could sow lettuces and, say, spinach and stuff. You'd want to probably direct sow those. My friend Bree Arthur, many of you may know her. She does poppies and larkspur, and she made a post, I think today, I saw that she was doing some late ones. She normally doesn't sow them this late, but she was still sowing some poppies today. So those you can direct sow and they'll come up. But there are some plants that truly need to have a season. It don't always come up after the first year either. I'm looking just this direction over here beside the visitor center, we have a plant called Cynojackia, and it's in the Styrax family, and they take it at least 2 years to germinate. So you never know. You have to do a little bit of research sometimes on the oddball seeds, but some things will germinate immediately and others not. So
and that information you can usually find with a little bit of looking and knowing good resources.
Cool. And somebody just asked, they asked earlier with regards, I think, to the elephant ear, they said that native Aracema needs to be planted fresh, but you said you dried your sample, different protocols for not.
Our native Aracema is a little bit different. The seeds are much larger on them. And they're also from a cool climate for the most part. They're more temperate species than there are. This is a tropical one, so it probably goes more through a wet-dry cycle than here where we have a continual mesic environment for the most part. So, Awesome. And again, that kind of goes back to what do you do to those seeds to get them to germinate. You may have to not let them dry out oaks, for instance, you don't want to let them dry out.
As soon as we got these acers.
And the fresher the maples are, the better. At least to get them sown. If you let them dry out, even if they don't always germinate real well. So.
Yeah, I was worried because those came through. They had to come through customs, so they'd been in envelopes for a long time.
Yeah.
But
Cool. Carolyn's asking, what sort of potting mix do you use for the elephant ears?
I just use a bag mix, like a peat perlite. That you could use Miracle Grow stuff. Whatever you get at the your Lowe's, Home Depot, or your garden center. Just a peat perlite is wonderful. So.
Cool. So they're not picky.
They're not picky to get them germinated. Once they get going, though, they are tiny. I mean, they're itty bitty. If you can get them potted onto something bigger and start fertilizing them, they will grow. But I have some that we torture in a pot, I think, down in the nursery yet. Isn't there I think from last year I have some.
yeah,
But we can pot those up and they will turn into something beautiful by spring. So,
Great. Marilyn says a friend of hers wants to know what, if anything, she can do to protect her plants if an ice storm is predicted. I think she's concerned about shrubs and small trees.
Oh, yeah. If you might do some minor pruning, just preventative pruning, but it just depends. And ice storms are so unpredictable.
Yeah, ice storms are super hit or miss.
You might not, it can be a mile down the road and you won't have an issue. So it's really hard to say. Some plants are more prone to breakage than others, but I don't know. You can, further north, they would wrap them. Things like arborvitaes, they would actually, I remember growing up seeing people either they would put burlap on them or just wrap them in twine to keep them from splying out like this, which happens a lot of times on some of the conifers. Broadleaf evergreens, you can get breakage. It just, it depends on the individual plant, and it's hard to say specifically. So you sometimes just have to wait and see what happens. If you know that if there is a heavy load, and if you have the opportunity, if it's super heavy, you might gently knock some of it off, but you can do as much damage knocking off the snow and ice as just letting it go and the plants kind of relax, and then they will come back up once the load is off them. But you're still, it depends on the plant. I don't know.
Yeah,
we haven't had any bad ones recently.
Shh.
Okay. Sophia, if you would, could you remind us of the name of that Semania?
Bavarian.
Bolivian.
Bolivian sunset.
Bolivian. What's the specific epithet for it?
You want me to tell them?
Please.
I know it.
You want me to butcher it?
Please.
They asked you.
Sylvestica?
Semania, Sylvatica.
Sylvatica.
Yeah, Sylvatica, like Sylvester Forest. Like
the cat?
Yeah. It means forest.
All right. Are there any special steps to grow redbud seeds?
I know
I don't
one.
know offhand. I feel like there's a cold.
It won't hurt. Denny, our former director, Denny Werner, would be the one to ask, but
yeah.
I know he scarifies them. So I would do a chemical scarification, but you can sand them. Sand the seeds to break the seed coat. And that will help the water imbibe into them, and they will germinate much better.
Nice. Okay.
And I don't think they have to be chilled, but it wouldn't hurt them probably if you did.
Sure. And I think this will be the last question. It's from Carolyn. How strong a fertilizer do you use, and how frequent do you water new seedlings?
In our media, when we sow seedlings, it does not have any fertilizer. So when we start seedlings, they're like their own perfect little packet. Like they have everything they need to get started. Once they get to a point, you'll pot them up, and then you could just use that Miracle Grow or something similar. So in that case, it feeds up to 6 months?
Yeah, that is, you're saying the media. And that's, yes. And if you use that, like the bag medias anymore, most of them have a charge in them of fertilizer. If you're using it, you won't have to do anything for a little while. Like these, I could really make them grow if we did throw some fertilizer on them, either liquid or granule, after they've germinated. But they really don't need any nutrients until they've germinated and get going for a while. So they won't starve to death immediately.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you so much, Tim and Sophia, for doing this presentation for us. We really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody at home, for tuning in for us today. This was a lot of fun. Make sure you join us next week at 3 o'clock. We're going to be having a presentation from Greg Page, our new horticulture director. He's going to be talking about plant collecting, which will be a lot of fun because, well, Mark's going to be gone to Costa Rica, and I'm sure a few of you will be gone to Costa Rica as well. So we'll get to learn about plant collecting while they're all gone. So thanks again for showing up today. We hope we'll see you next time. Y'all take care.